Today I'd like to welcome Tannis to the show. Tannis is currently completing her master's in the art of counseling psychology through Yorkville University while working as a parent coach. A significant amount of her career has been in the position of supporting other parents with their children's behavioral challenges, specifically emotional regulation. Welcome, Tannis.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your welcome and inviting me to be here, because I'm very honored to share on your journey in getting back into the artist way. And as I shared with you, I dabbled in it briefly years ago, but know that journaling is definitely a tool that is beneficial for me, and hope to get back into it as well. So this is like a little nudge from the universe telling me to pick that back up. So I love that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Me too. And I really appreciate you, accepting the invitation really and having this conversation. So I do definitely want to get into both of our sort of artistic experiences and the creative way maybe we walk through life. But before we do that, I wanted to just touch on emotion regulation. As we go through the artist's way and we write the morning pages, which are really, if we're doing them right away when we wake up and we're just purging, just sort of that brain dump, the way it's sort of suggested to do in the book, it's amazing what can come up from our subconscious that we didn't really even realize we were repressing, or that we weren't thinking about, or that we were avoiding thinking about. And so I wanted to give our audience members and the folks doing this program with us just a couple of little tools maybe to keep in their back pocket for if some things come up, be it memories or experiences or angers or frustrations, whatever feelings might pop up for them. What are ways that they can maybe regulate their emotions, even identify what's going on, sit with it, and then ultimately, hopefully, let it go and move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, lovely. Like our life's work here, right? Because it's just never going to end. We're not going to hit a certain age and be like, yay, I know how to regulate my emotions. Now I can live my best life. It's just a constant piece of our evolution. And I think just starting with the vocabulary around it, I know lots of people often ask me how I feel, and I respond with not feeling words. So creating a space to learn about what are these feeling words and what do they mean to me. You know, I'm definitely a person that probably has tears with a lot of different emotions, and whereas some other people in my life don't. So for kids, learning what emotions are and understanding that different things can be attached to one emotion, and that it shows up different for everybody is important to take into consideration. So yeah, in my spiritual journey, I started doing some work in all the chakras, and in those chakras again was this connecting with feelings. And so one of the things I started doing was using a feelings wheel, and every day in my calendar, I would write down 3 feelings that I was experiencing or having or felt that I had felt that day. And it was about 3 months in, I was doing this and picking 3 every day, and realized as I was writing emotions that I was picking emotions that I thought I should be having or was thinking that I was having. And so then it became a bit more challenging because I needed to shift from what I'm thinking about my emotion, but actually what I'm feeling in my heart, what emotion my body's feeling. So
can I stop you there for one sec? Because that is fascinating. That is and I think that anybody listening would really be able to identify with that in some capacity. I've kind of had the opposite thing in life where instead of being able to use thinking words, sometimes somebody asks me my opinion on something, I'll literally lead with, I feel that this, and I feel that, but am I feeling that, or am I thinking that? You know what I mean? So I'm a feelings-led person maybe, but it's so interesting. I think so many people could identify with that idea of what they think they should be feeling about something. Yeah. So tell me more about that process. How did you end up connecting really with yourself and what you were actually feeling?
So what I've learned about myself, and it may be similar for others, is that our brains think fast and our brains respond first before we even hear what our heart is telling us.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was really about like slowing down and acknowledging what my thought was. Okay, you think you were happy today. So, okay, yes, I got you. I heard you, brain. Tell me what you think. But just giving myself extra space to just really take some deep breaths and like put my hand on my heart and just like think about what the feeling is that I'm having. So tuning into my body, how is my body feeling today? Is anywhere tense? Am I having pain, or just really trying to think or to feel, not think. Like catching myself all the time. But the feelings wheel, the visual, helped me to like find other emotions that maybe resonated. So because I didn't have all the vocabulary and I'm learning it, I could look at the wheel and be like, oh yeah, that feels right. That feels like that's what I'm having.
Yeah, they say all the time that for many of us, we don't really identify too much beyond sad or mad or glad, right? So we can figure out happiness as a general area, sadness as another general area, and really anger as the other general area. But there's so much more going on, right? And that's why the feelings wheel is so beneficial, to kind of break that down further and further and further until we can really pinpoint what it is. And I like also the idea, you mentioned sort of being mindful or getting into your body and trying to examine what your body feels. Do you have any tips and tricks for how you go through that? Are you a body scanner person, or do you focus more on your breathing? What is your process?
Yeah, I definitely, breathing has become a tool that's been really simple, only because as I've had children tell me, well, we're already breathing, so it's not like we have to learn how to do anything different, right? So we can do this anywhere. And what I like to add in with just simple taking a deep breath in and deep breath out is a bit of mindfulness piece. So I'm breathing in peace and I'm exhaling anxiety, or I'm exhaling stress. And so by adding in those mindful components, we're really asking for what we want more of in our life. As I take a deep breath in to inhale peace, and then I take a nice long exhale out to exhale stress or whatever it is I'm trying to get rid of. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, that's very simple, very straightforward, but very, just as you were talking, I was experimenting with that thought myself and that feeling myself, and it was very effective.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to just add to just a regular breath. And it could be anything in that moment, right? Maybe in that moment you're feeling scared. So then you can quickly exhale that 3 times and see how your body feels or shifts after that. Yeah.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And we were talking a little bit about identifying feelings. So that was one step. And now we're focusing more on sort of regulating. What are some of the tools that you teach parents and kids in terms of like how to identify if they're in a good space, or if they, need to slow down a little bit because maybe they're entering that, my husband and I, we always talk about the hot stove, and I'll say, listen, I'm nearing the hot stove and I need to take the pot off the stove or it's going to boil over. That's kind of our analogy that I use in our house. What are some of the tools that you and your parents and kids go through?
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's great. Get it off before it makes a big mess, right?
Yeah, totally.
So one of the tools we use in my workspace is a curriculum called Kids Have Stress Too. And it's based on the stoplights, so the red, yellow, green. So green represents a space where we feel safe, we're able to manage and cope. And yellow is something's not quite red or right. And then the third being red and that's when the big behavior or the big boiling over or the big challenge is. And the beautiful thing I like about the stoplight is that If you were to ask somebody, another adult or even a child in red, what feelings they were having, they may are having a big selection of feelings, right? Sometimes it's not just one. And sometimes we can't identify actually what we're feeling because we're feeling so many things. So this tool has been really helpful for a lot of parents, and especially who don't have a great vocabulary around emotions, to just say, you know what, I'm just in yellow, something's off. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter at that point what is off. It's more important about catching them before they get to red and helping them self-regulate to get back to green. So although we're not identifying certain feelings at this point, we can at least say safely that we're in a certain zone and choose what to do next with that information.
Yeah, for sure. That's so beneficial. And I think, it's once again very simple, but really easy to adapt for adults and kids, right? And really easy, again, my husband and I have learned the hard way for sure. Like, we can't always address difficult topics, big financial stressors, or, big life plans. We shouldn't be doing that from a position when we're already in the yellow, right? We need to make sure that we're both in the green before we address those big things, because otherwise our distance to red is pretty short, right? Whereas if we make sure that we're in a safe place, if we're feeling green, we're feeling good, then those bigger topics, we can have those big conversations that might take us through a variety of emotions, but we're not going to get activated, or we're not, going to end up red before we know what's happened, right?
Yeah, you bet, right? Meeting in a safe space. And what we know about red is that when we're fired up, if we're in fight or flight, is that our amygdala is on fire, and there is no problem solving happening when we're in these states. So obviously, as a parent, that's generally the time we really want our children to listen, when they're having a big tantrum or they're screaming and yelling at us. But I mean, we just have to be patient and recognize that whatever we say is just going to fuel the fire, and that it's not a time for comprehension and problem solving. And red is exhausting. We all know when we get into these spaces that it tires us out, and it doesn't last for too long. So being able to reconnect with other people when we're back in green, that's when we can have healthy conversation about what happened, or what we want to try different next time, or how we're going to, solve all the financial challenges that are thrown our way.
Totally. No, that's such a great point. And I thank you for acknowledging that. In technical terms, we talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system and those kinds of things. But in layman's terms, really, we have a thinking brain and a feeling brain. And when we are activated in fight or flight, when that part of us is in control, that is a survival mechanism, and we are not capable of thinking our best thoughts. Like you say, that's not rational thought time. That is get out of danger, fight to the death. That is, a biological reality that we cannot win against, right? So we have to let that moment pass and come back to our thinking brains. I know for a lot of therapists that are, sorry, I have a really bright light here, and it's actually making my eyes water a little bit. Oh my goodness. Therapists who work with children, when they talk to parents, especially of really, really young children, they talk a lot about emotional co-regulation and, connecting with their child, offering hugs and that kind of thing to sort of relax their nervous system. What do you do when the kids start to get a bit older, and how do you regulate yourself when you find that fight or flight has been activated?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I've just been trying to acknowledge that they're in that red space, and I just need to stop talking and give them that space and reconnect when it's safer and more practical. Obviously, we want to keep our kids safe, so if that needs to be part of the thought process around safety, having plans around that. Really getting parents to start and encouraging their children to start exploring different calming strategies, so that they can start trying them. I consider thinking about all of the senses that we have. So considering taste, smell, touch, sound, to find what people need. Some are physical, some people need that physical release. So getting out and being out in nature, practicing all of these things when we're in green, and examining how they make us feel, what we like. And the more often we can practice them when we're in that green space, the more likely we might choose that when we're in red. So just trying tons of different things to see what feels good.
Great advice. I love that. I love that. Yeah, really well said. So transitioning a little bit, if you don't mind, if we pivot out of emotional regulation. And I know for years and years and years before I understood anything about psychology or had studied psychology, my own version of emotional regulation was really creating art. And I had no connection to what was really happening and no rhyme or reason as to why. But if I felt something, it needed to come out. You know, for me, it was always better out than in. And of course, I didn't want to take out those big feelings on anyone. So for me, that meant maybe writing a song or banging on the piano, or, you know, writing a story with my arch nemesis as the person who dies, or, you know what I mean? Whatever it had to be, that was the way that I released those big emotions. So how does creativity show up in your life, in your professional life, in your personal life, and what is there a link to emotion for you with creativity?
Well, I think we're a bit similar on this, because I can for sure say banging on the piano was definitely a tool I used through high school. And I knew I wasn't going to go into music for post-secondary education because I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want it to become forced or a demand. It needed to stay a sacred place. Yeah. So that still remains a thing, the piano. Yeah, and then also in my mom phase of cleaning. I don't know, cleaning has become a therapeutic release too. I joke like my OCD's kicked in. Everybody get out of the house so I can like do the thing and have that release. But for sure, in the last few years, it's been crocheting and needlework and just real creative art. So I like to create pieces using recycled materials. You know, going through the house and saving things that are sentimental and incorporating them into the art. Yeah, just I'll find a quote or poem or something that I like and cut out all the letters from like cereal boxes and just kind of bring everything together as the day aligns, and that's neat. It's neat to be able to not spend too much money and just use things that are lying around the house, and it always works out. Whatever it is you're creating seems to be things just kind of line up, and
I love that so much. I sorry to cut you off, but I briefly checked out your Instagram literally right before we started this call. And so I didn't get time to look at each piece individually, but as I was very quickly scanning, obviously some beautiful crocheted items there, but I loved those, what you were talking about, using recycled materials, you know, things that you potentially would have just thrown out otherwise, you know, and how it came together in an artistic expression with a saying or with a, you know, quote or with a poem or an excerpt or whatever. I just loved it so much. And I was like, oh, I haven't really experienced that with I have so many friends who are artists, and I admire so many artists, and I haven't come across that exact, you know, that's the most beautiful thing about art and creativity, I find, is nobody can express you the way you can, you know, and it was beautiful to see that expression of who you are. It was really, really touching, really beautiful, and I'm looking forward to snooping some more.
Oh, well, thank you. And yes, it is. You said that really well, right? Only I can express where I'm at. So that's lovely. Part of my healing journey and spiritual journey has included finding out what my power animal is. And a lot of my family and friends have also done the same. So a lot of my art projects have been that person's power animal with a bit of a poem about the strengths of that animal. So you'll see a lot of animals in there. Yeah.
That's so cool. So you make those as gifts for your family members with their power animal?
Yeah.
I love that. One of my favorite things to do although often I do it in a silly sense, but I love writing songs for friends and family members. Like I love, hey, it's your birthday. Let me, jam out a little tune here for you, and or about their pets or about whatever. I've written, a song for the kids and, some stories with them in it. But, I usually don't take myself too seriously during that part. It's not quite as beautiful and spiritual and, maybe not quite as poetic as yours. But those are some of my favorite things to create because it's just pure joy. It's just the joy of loving someone or loving their, loving the joy of loving their pet even, you know what I mean? Whatever it happens to be, I just love expressing that. And it's, those are some of my most joyful pieces for sure.
I love that you shared that because for me, I see that as like improv, being in just the moment and being completely vulnerable to whatever is going to spew out of your mouth and how you play. And it's also truthful, right? It's not premeditated. It's just life right today and right now and how I experience you. And I think that's such a wonderful gift. What a gift to have somebody sing about you.
And likewise, to have somebody make a beautiful piece of work for you. I think that's incredible. That actually feels like a really fun kind of place to wrap it up.
We actually ran into a little audio trouble there, so to close out, I just wanted to say that music and art have always maintained a reflective and grounding space throughout Tannis's life. Playing piano, crocheting, cross-stitch, and creating art are some of the ways she gets expressive. Feel free to check out her projects on Instagram at collected_creations. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.